In the meantime here, the consensus is this blue wave that some of the cynics said of Ryan's departure, that it was all because he wanted to get out of the way before the storm came. Now, remember, though, storms have an odd habit of not happening the way they're prescripted to happen, or the way the consensus tells you they will happen. Like the emergence of Donald Trump winning the presidential election. Wasn't supposed to happen. Like, the 1948 election that had Dewey easily defeating Truman. Didn't happen. I could go back again and again. The people who got Brexit wrong, the people who got the appetite for tax reform and big tax cuts under Ronald Reagan, and even the election that prompted Ronald Reagan. Wrong, 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 wrong. There was a time when that didn't even look remotely possible. So, is this consensus a dangerous one to make this early in the game? Remember, those midterms are in November. Let's ask Lawrence Jones, Campus Reform Editor-in-Chief. We've got Liz Harrington with us right now, the Washington Free Beacon staff writer, and Dan Gaynor, the Media Research Center Vice President of Business and Culture. Dan, end with you, begin with you. I just think it's very, very dangerous to lop onto a consensus. That's not to say that some consensus views can't be right, but a lot of times they're very, very wrong.
What the media are trying to do is a self-fulfilling prophecy. They want to talk about this like they did about Hillary. They hope they can make it happen. But I remember staying up election night for both Brexit and for Trump and seeing their downcast faces as they ended up being wrong, and the New York Times election tracker go from 84% Hillary all the way to 95% plus for Trump as he won. So they have to remember, if people really thought this was happening, maybe they'd be watching some of these networks that are hyping the blue wave a little bit more. CNN's ratings are in a dumpster fire right now.
Liz, what do you make of that?
I agree. If you're talking about a blue wave here, the signs for how big that would be for Democrats are not particularly good right now. They're only up by 3 points in the generic ballot. Their lead has been dwindling ever since tax cuts passed. You also had a new poll that the majority of Americans give Donald Trump credit for the booming economy and not Obama, and that's Democrats who agree with that as well. So all these signs of the media of trying to portray that this wave is coming, I mean, the numbers aren't really showing it. Of course, a lot can change, but if there's going to be a wave, there has to be a central issue that motivates voters, whether it was in 2006 with the Iraq War, 2010 with Obamacare. What's the central issue this year? It's not Russia. It's not Stormy Daniels. Opposition to Trump is not going to cut it, and the Democrats need to rally around something else, and I just don't see it yet.
You know, there is a flip to all of this, though, Lawrence, where you underestimate the size of the wave. Like in '94, there was a general consensus building Republicans are going to do well, not the nearly 50-seat advantage that they ultimately got in the Gingrich Revolution. So you can underplay it, and maybe the blue wave is a blue tsunami. What do you think?
Yeah, I would caution Republicans on underplaying it as well. You know, what we've seen is that the president has been able to maintain his base, especially as it relates after he got tax reform done. And then, when it comes to immigration and other issues, with the EPA, regulations and things like that. But the Republicans are going to have a hard time, especially when we're talking about the House and Senate, of selling to the American people, what else did you guys do? You guys said that y'all were going to repeal and replace, and you didn't do it. And people that are on the right, like me, are not going to be as energized to go out and vote for them. And that's the risk they run into when you have the Democratic Party, that although they don't have that message, which I totally agree on, but they are energized. Their base is energized. I'm not sure if they need a message at this point, because right now it is all anti-Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I don't know how far that carries you. But, Dan, to sort of a point that Lawrence mentioned as well, the president does have his base. It's a very vocal, powerful, walk on glass to get to the polls base. But is that going to be enough? In other words, when the other side is jazzed as well, what do you think?
Well, I think ultimately it's too early to tell. And I think that's the media mistake that's going on. I still remember when George H.W. Bush had 90-some% approval rating after the war in Iraq. And then it's the economy stupid. If the economy keeps going well, if the disasters the media predicted for Trump keep not happening, they're going to have a hard time almost 2 years into Trump to tell people that Trump's a disaster.
Lawrence, what are you going to say?
But Neil, there is a problem that Republicans have to understand. You cannot link the success of the Republican Congress to Donald Trump. What we've seen is that even if the president goes and campaigns for someone,
Lawrence, in a midterm, that's what happens for good or ill.
Well, it could. This is an unconventional time, though, Neil. This is a different time in politics, and what we've seen is Donald Trump's success is Donald Trump's success, and it doesn't apply to the Congress. And I think that Congress has to get their own message. They have to do their own campaigning. They can't depend on the president to go and campaign for them and think that somehow that's going to make them win.
Liz, I want to introduce the Roseanne effect on this, and bear with me because you know I'm crazy, but you tend to nod your head and very polite each time I do get crazy. And I think the surprising rating success of that show could show an undercurrent of, you know, we're ticked off at this view that we're Neanderthals or that the Hollywood elite have it. You know the drill, and you've heard it again, time and again. And that maybe there's an undercurrent of people who say, well, you know, we see all of the president's problems. We see the extremes and the volatility and now all the allegations. But we still think he's doing an okay job. And that might materialize in a way that we're not appreciating. I know it's a little crazy, but what do you think?
No, I think there could be definitely some truth to that. I mean, with the success for that show, people are tired. It's the reason why Trump won. People are tired of being told what to think, tired of being told that they're racists or homophobes or sexist, all this, that, and the other. And normal people are tuning out to the mainstream media coverage of an obsession with Russia, and now Stormy Daniels and the special counsel investigation. I mean, that same poll that showed that they give Trump credit for the economy, which I think is an important poll that shows his approval ticking up and his success ticking up. That same poll showed that people didn't care about Stormy Daniels or Russia, even if they believed it happened. Like, they just don't care about these types of issues. So I think when we're talking about, I mean, lots can change before November.
No doubt. But, Dan, you mentioned the numbers in the beginning, these polls that show this is fairly competitive. You have an unnamed Democrat going against an unnamed Republican and talk generically about how things go along the ballot. I would think in this environment, at least to hear much of the consensus view tell it, that it is going to be a blue wave romp when, in fact, you look under the hood and you look at numbers that are fairly narrow.
Well, yeah, like I said, when the media hype something constantly, and the most they can muster are slightly narrow Democrat, plus, that to me augurs bad things for them. And whether it's Trump is a master communicator. You talked about the Roseanne effect. I expect he'll be on Roseanne at some point in time, either before the election, as a guest, as a celebrity guest. I think he will get his message out whether the media want it or not. And will that tip the scales? It could well.
All right. I don't know about the master communicator thing, but he does go against the consensus view of what a communicator should be, and it does work for him. But, Lawrence, do you get a sense here that there is an undercurrent of rage here about the way the president is being treated? He calls it fake news. Of course, there's a lot of fakery going around here, but that there is a cabal against him. And the latest reports on his personal lawyer's office is getting raided. Whatever you think of the justification of that, I mean, I talked to a number of very prominent liberals who said, whoa, and again, it might be very justified, and there's a reason why those sort of things are approved, but a lot of people are looking at that, man, this is open season on this guy, and they feel for him.
Yeah, Neil, that's the one mistake of the Democratic Party. This whole Russia stuff, as well as the constant attacks on this president. I call balls and strikes as relates to this president. But even when I see what's happening from Mueller to going after the president's personal attorney, it just seems, I'm not saying that it is corruption. It just seems corrupt. It seems like anyone that's connected with the president, they're trying to squeeze them to get some type of information or to put pressure on the president as it relates to that Russia investigation. That may not be the case, but in the eyes of American people that elected this guy, it seems like this is the only cloud that's hanging above his administration when he's been focusing on jobs, when he's been able to get Kim Jong-un to the table, when he's now going after Russia. So what is it?
All right. Thank you, guys, very, very much. I appreciate that. I do have a quote I want to pass along. In 1976, said of a former governor at the time, "This is the swan song to an imaginary campaign many thought would light a fire in the conservative movement. It has not, and we will never hear one Ronald Reagan again." 4 years later, this man, pilloried in the press, was the Republican nominee and went on to win in an historic landslide. Oops. More after this.